name's Sam Alvarado, and I'm honored and appreciate that you're here to listen to my stories, my life, and the activities I've been involved in. I'll give you a short history about myself, and I'd like to spend more time on the activities I've been involved. So I talk about myself, I'm going to be 75 years old, and it's going to be a long, long day. So I don't want to go into too much about my personal life, but I'll try to cut it to about 5-8 minutes, and then the rest of the time in activities that I've been involved, because I've been involved in a lot of activities. I come from a background of Mexicano and Lebanese. My father was from Mexico, and my mother's Lebanese, so I got the best of both cultures, I feel. I was born a native of San Antonio, Texas, born December 22nd, 1930, so I'm going to be 75 years old. Been around a long time. I got to go back to my youth, why I'm involved in this kind of work. When I was 14 years old, I got arrested for stealing Chinese plums. It's a joke, but it's true. I jumped the fence of the house on King William, and we used to do it all the time, pick up the Chinese plums on the floor, on the ground, and pick them up, and we ate them. There was 5 of us that were arrested that particular day. There were 3 Hispanic kids and 2 Anglo kids. They arrested 5 of us and took 3 of us to jail, and the other 2 kids, they let them go. The white kids, I remember their name, Lee Milligan and Jack Coburn. So I get arrested, I'm sitting there on the floor, handcuffed, and this man walks up to me, "What are you doing here, son?" I said, "I don't know, I got arrested." "What'd you do?" "Stole Chinese plums." He said, "No kidding, yeah." It was Henry B. Gonzalez. He was, at that time, the probation officer, juvenile probation officer. To make a long story short, he got me out of there, and then I said, "Wait a minute, I got a question for you, Henry." I called him Henry at that time. I still call him Henry until he died. I said, "Why did they let those 2 kids go and kept us in?" He said, "Because they're white." And I didn't understand what that meant. I said, "What do you mean they're white?" "Yeah." "Well, explain to me." He said, "When you get older, you'll find out." That was my first taste of discrimination. If I offend anybody today, I don't mean to do it. I'm just going to tell you the activities I was involved in, why. Okay? That was my first taste. Then I went to school at Regiment Tech High School. I majored in auto mechanics. I can't even change the spark plug, to tell you the truth. And I made straight A's. People ask me, "Well, how'd you graduate? You can't even change the spark plug." Because I memorized the book. The good Lord gave me a good memory, but mechanically, I never worked in my life. I can't change the spark plug. But why was it that I graduated with auto mechanics? Because in those days, us Mexican Americans weren't given the opportunity. We were, according to them, too dumb to go academically, to go to college and whatever. They prepared us to do handicap work. I mean, hand work with our hands. I graduated in 49, and a year later, the Korean War started, and I was inducted in the Army. I was in the paratroopers, which is going to lead to a story I have about paratroopers. I spent 2 years in the Army, came back. I got the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star, and a couple of things, a few little citations, whatever. I was very proud of them until I went to Odessa, Texas. We were wounded. We were in El Paso in the hospital. William Bowman Hospital. We were coming to Banksy here, who was going to change us, or transfer us to a hospital closest to our home. We were all from South Texas. As you know, who lives in South Texas, who was in Korean War, they're all mostly Mexican Americans. We stopped in Odessa to eat them in service. We had our uniforms, our belts. Some had no arms, some we had legs. I had both my legs bandaged. But they went service because we were Mexican. Well, make a long story short, we wrecked the place. We just broke every chair and everything, got out of there. They arrested us, put us in jail. The Attorney General out of El Paso, 4 blisters out. They closed up the place, not because they didn't serve Mexican Americans, because they didn't serve U.S. soldiers. We were just come back from combat. There was not a taste of discrimination that I saw. And as I lived my life, I kept seeing all this discrimination, all these injustices that I saw. I still wasn't convinced that what I was going to do with my life. So I went to work for the government. And I went to work for Sam Houston. The same thing followed. We were all GS5s. I don't know if you know grades in the federal government. GS5s and 7s are entry-level grades. We couldn't get promoted. Now I was wondering why. But again, I didn't know it was discrimination to per se that. I said, well, this is discrimination. It's something different. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. At any rate, my first break came about 1962 when President Kennedy decided that the federal employees didn't have any representation, so he was going to give 17 scholarships to the top 17 in the country to go to arbitration school, which was an 18-month course at Georgetown University. And I decided to try it. Everybody said, hey, you're crazy. I said, you know, you're going to get the top 17 in the country. You're talking about 4,000 people going to apply. I said, well, I'm going to try. So I was lucky. I was one of the top 17 selected to go to Georgetown University. And I graduated with the certification of arbitration. The thing about it, I was the only person who didn't have a degree at that time. I had an associate with SAC, but everybody was a master's and PhDs and whatever. And everybody looked at me and said, what are you doing here? You know, like I had no business being there. I said, well, I won the top 17 in the country. I don't believe that they deliberately wanted to hurt me, but they were laughing at me, saying, this guy, you know, what's he doing here? Well, that gave me the incentive to prove to them that I was just as good or better than them. So I spent almost 16 months, day and night, 16 hours a day, on weekends, studying the Constitution. I studied so much that I learned it verbatim. I can quote you any constitutional right that you may have, verbatim, okay? But only the constitutional rights that apply to us, not in criminal, but it applies to discrimination, labor, Social Security, etc. The benefits that this country is supposed to provide us. And I learned one thing at that time that stood in my head, stayed in my head. I learned that the government's responsibility to the citizens. And I always use this phrase that I've learned, and I use it to motivate people and to get them to do what I feel, what kind of leadership they should be, what kind of leaders they should be. I always said the government is not the arbiter of social pleasures, you know. It is a responsibility of the government to provide the citizens with equal opportunities. It is the responsibility of the government to provide the funds and the property that citizens deserve. And with that, I said, we as Hispanics, or Mexican Americans that we call them, because they keep changing their names, we felt that we have an inherent and fundamental and constitutional right for equality and fairness. And at that time, I felt we never had that fairness or equality or equity. We didn't have it. And because of that, I decided to pursue a career in trying to eliminate what I felt was a lot of hate, a lot of prejudice, a lot of injustice, especially with the Hispanic. And I say Hispanic because I am Hispanic. And I felt we needed somebody to do this work. And I decided to take that as a career. At that time, after I graduated number 2 in my class, and I proved to them that I was just as good and just as smart as they were. Just give me the opportunity. And I proved it. So I decided to apply for an arbitration job. Believe me, I tried 18 times. I was rejected every time. At that time, we paid $40,000, which is a lot of money back in '63. And I was rejected every time. Qualified, but not selected. So the government decided to open positions in South America. And I applied for it, and I was selected to go to South America. I spent a few years there. I was an advisor to Latin America. Don't tell me what I was advising them on, because I did some things that I'm not very proud of. I came back kind of bitter against the government, and I came back to the GS-12, by the way. I couldn't get promoted in San Antonio, I got the GS-12 over there. I came back, and all my friends that worked with me at the time I left were still GS-5s and 7s. They couldn't get promoted. So that was my first venture into using my arbitration skills. I decided to file a class action against Fort Sam Houston. But people do not understand what a class action is you file a class action complaint on behalf of a certain protected group. In other words, you can have 5 plaintiffs, but everybody that's Hispanic, or everybody's a woman, or everybody's black, whatever group you're representing is included. And they will benefit from the class action. So I filed against Fort Sam Houston, and prior to going to a hearing, I got called by the general and said, "Look, Sam, you're just 12. What are you doing this for? You know, you're already." I said, "Yeah, I made it out there in South America. You guys didn't give me anything." And the rest of my co-workers here can't get promoted. He says, "Well," and this is why I always feel that somewhere down the line somebody's gonna. You probably saw that movie. It says that offer him something he can't refuse, or whatever they call it. He said, "We'll give you just 13 now, and within a year we'll make you 14 if you drop the charges." I said, "Let me think about it." So how long is it going to take you to decide? I said, "About 30 seconds. I'm sorry, I'm going to use the language. I said, "Go to hell. I'm not going to do it," okay? I won that case. It was a beautiful case. I won it because, not because I was good, it's because the facts were there. On a class action, it can show the statistical data. Happy case is won. You know, I always said that the racist efforts are hidden in policies. They're concealed in the process of the policies, okay? But whenever you study and research and you bring out the facts and the statistical data, it shows the racist element that's involved in there. And that's how you win your class actions. I became an expert at it because, not because I'm smart, because I work hard at it. It takes a lot of hard work. And believe me, it's effective. Because this is where my activities come about, see? I decided that the best route to take to eradicate racism is to file class actions. First one I filed against Fort Sam. Of course, I became a target for management. By the time a year was up, by the time I adjudicated the case and everything else, they happened to eliminate my position everywhere I went. I ended up with a GS3, but I started with back in the 50s. So I said, well, I don't think they want me here. But anyway, in South America, I was honored by 6 different countries for the work I did over there. I was given 2 of the highest awards the government gives the United States here. And I wasn't very proud of any of them because of what they did to me. So one day I was sitting there and said, what am I going to do with my life? I'm GS3, I can't live on GS3 salary. At that time I was married and had a kid. So I had a legal pad and I wrote, I quit. And I said, you SOB. I wrote it. Took it to the general, dropped it in his desk, and I walked out. I never cleared a base, and I had top secret clearance because I was in South America. I never, to this day, have cleared. So they had me as not ever clearing the base. I had top secret clearance, but I didn't clear. So with that in mind, I decided to retire. I said, well, I've been through a lot of, I'd be like to retire now. And I see some of the questions here that Ron prepared from. They're very good. It says, think of an experience or event that discouraged you. What kept you going at that moment? Are there other examples? I had come home from South America, my last trip, and I was driving downtown, and I saw in City Hall about 100 people outside, back at City Hall. They were garbage workers, what they call them refuse collectors now. That time they called them garbage collectors. They were on strike. And they had all kinds of problems. They weren't getting paid overtime. They were working 14 hours a day, all kinds of labor issues. So I stopped and watched him. I had this young Hispanic, at that time was a councilman, Henry Cisneros, talking to him. We're going to help you. And I wasn't familiar with the political arena here. All I knew was that they had passed a single-member district rule in their ordinance, whatever they call it. And we now had a majority of Hispanics in the city council. And I was listening to it, I said, well, this guy's going to win the case because, you know, we got a majority, and 89, 90% of the garbage collectors were Hispanics with a few African Americans. Well, I walk in, and what do I hear? Every Hispanic city councilman vote to fire these workers. 300 of them were fired. The biggest mass fire in the history of San Antonio. And I know about strikes because I was dealing with labor unions because I was union president. And I saw that they had fired every one of them for the first time in history. They've had about 12 strikes here in San Antonio, and never have they fired anybody until the Hispanic decided to strike. The first time Hispanics ever struck, and they get all fired. Again, you saw the racism in there. And I was very discouraged. I said, you know, I guess the Anglos don't have a monopoly on people that are bad for us. Even our Hispanic brothers are bad. I said, once they become become high in the echelon of government, they become the same people that have been discriminating against us all the time. Then I saw the unions in San Antonio were supporting the city manager and the city council to fire his workers. And there's something wrong with his picture. So I decided to start a union. I did. And at that time, every major union in the country came to San Antonio to blast me. I mean, they had a field day with me. Worldwide, they called me a communist, a radical. So I wrote a concept paper, and they call it a manifesto and all kinds of... They blasted me all over the radio and TV and the newspapers. But they were doing me a favor because nobody knew who I was. They gave me a lot of publicity. And all of a sudden, I was top dog around here. And I started a union and became the largest union in San Antonio. We destroyed the FLCIO that was the one that was participating in the strike against the workers. So then I decided I was ready to retire, but I said, well, I can't retire now. I got some work to do. So I continued doing what I did for 20 years. Even though I was already old enough to retire, I said, well, I'm going to start a union and do whatever I do. I finally retired in 95. In the meantime, during this period of time, I filed against CPS because they had not a single Hispanic supervisor, not even one. They were all deacon ditches. And they called for congressional investigation. I was the one that called for it. The congressman came, the 5 congressmen came down here. And this is where I'm talking about Korea, being a paratrooper. The personnel director, under testimony, direct testimony before the congressional committee, said that they didn't promote Mexican Americans as pole climbers. They called them wiremen. At that time, paid about $20 an hour. That was the highest paid. The other ones were in the hole were getting $3 an hour. He said, well, why don't you hire them at that level? Because you're afraid of height. And I was sitting there and I said, can I rebut that? We're afraid of height. And I said, Mr. Costello, look at me, what am I? At that time, we were Mexican Americans, okay? I was in Korea, I was in the paratroopers. I had 53 jumps in combat. 68% of the 82nd Airborne, which is the highest decorated outfit in Korea, were Mexican Americans, and we were afraid of height. That was the audacity of that person before a congressional committee saying we were afraid of height. And if you go look at every paratrooper outfit right now, you find that 50 or 60% of them are Hispanics. What motivates me to do what I do? I don't like injustice. I don't like discrimination. HEB, for one. I filed class action against HEB. And a lot of these things you don't hear about it because you don't read about it. The only thing you read in the paper is the crimes that we commit, not the good things that we do. And that's why I challenged the Express. And a long story about it, but we ended up, Joe Bernal, myself, Judge Peña, forcing Kirkpatrick, was the publisher, to hire Hispanic journalists. That's why you have, if you read the paper now, you find Hispanic journalists now. You didn't have any of that back then, okay? Not a single one. They had Ed Castillo talking about some drunken parties we may have, some restaurants or something men about town, they call it. And I didn't like that. We were trying to get rid of Paul Thompson because he was bad with us, but Kirkpatrick said, look, he's dying, Sam. He's got cirrhosis of liver, he's an alcoholic, let him go. We let him go, but right now, and they did start some journalism scholarship for Hispanic kids. They did a lot of good, but if you look at the Express now, it's the class action we filed against them that forced them. They didn't give it to us. We forced them to give us those journalists, Hispanics. Then the city itself did not have any Hispanic women in any high position. I filed a class action against the city on behalf of Hispanic women. Now if you go to the city, you find department heads, Hispanic women. You find them. You didn't have them before. So then I decided to file one against the Burke County Hospital District because they have 10 vice presidents, not a single Hispanic. Now they got 4. In fact, the president of the Burke County Hospital District, George Hernandez, is a Hispanic. So those changes came about because of the class actions that we filed. And it has had a profound change in the way these agencies treat us. And we are now ahead of the game. But we still have a lot to go on. Center for Healthcare, where you work, man. They did a reorganization, and it just happened that everybody that was laid off happened to be Hispanic by accident. I filed a class action. We won that one. We got them all back pay, reinstated, etc. The federal bank, the richest and largest federal institution in the world because they have the monies, okay? They have a lot of Hispanic women. Not a single one was a supervisor. Now they have 3 department heads, 1 vice president. Funny thing, I was at a LULAC function, and this lady was talking about how she got promoted to a vice president. She said, well, I have a master's degree, but I've had it for a long time, and I was senior clerk. But how'd you get promoted? She said, well, some crazy Mexican. They told me some crazy Mexican filed a class action suit against the bank. And they called me in, look, we're going to send you to San Antonio and promote you, make you vice president. You're all right, why? Because some crazy Mexican is part of the agreement. And she was talking, I was standing maybe 2, 3 people from me there. And Henry said, do you know who that crazy Mexican was? I said, no, I don't know who he was. He's right there next to you. That was me. I am not saying that this, I'm not telling you this because I want to brag about myself, but this is what you do. This is a feeling that you get when you see something like this happen. That you see the fruits of your labor. You see something positive that comes out of this. Because they say class actions is bad for the government. No, it's not bad. It's not bad for the government. They try to change it right now, and they're going to change it. Class actions are good. It's good for the government. The government needs some spanking once in a while. But that was a good class action we found. And then I finally retired, and Henry Rodriguez was the district director of LULAC at the time. He asked me to do the civil rights work for LULAC. LULAC hadn't done any civil rights work in ages, so I decided to take it. Of course, there's no money in it, so I took it anyway. I traveled all over Texas, filing this, filing that, doing all kinds of civil rights work for him. And I have to give credit for credit's due because of Henry Rodriguez, Luis, and Richard here and I that helped me, not only morally but financially. I was able to travel. I used to take the bus to Vernon, Texas, Wichita Falls, because my car had run down. I mean, I was living on a fixed salary, so I didn't have any money. So I took the bus and did my work. But they've always furnished me with money to eat, to travel. And people say, well, how come you have money? You dress so well. So, all these clothes I bought before I retired. When I was making good money. And I take care of my clothes. But what is it that happened after that? What is it that makes me continue to do what I'm doing? I finally said, I'm quitting LULAC, I'm quitting everything. So lo and behold, the Department of Justice comes around, and they'd like to take at least 5 minutes to talk about what my future is going to be. I hope to God that the good Lord gives me a good 5 more years. Not because I want to live 5 more years, because I want to do something real rational in the next 5 years.